Joining me this hour, as he does always on these Wednesdays, is Cameron Smith of the Tennessean. Cameron, with us until 3 this afternoon. Hello.
Hi, Matt. I know that you often agree with Hillary Clinton.
Yeah.
So, you know.
I mean, it's quite an experience. I don't know what to think of it.
Except for that once in future president part.
Well, all right. Well, I mean, but she did the other day said, no, pro-ceasefire is pro-Hamas because pro-ceasefire is giving Hamas what they want, an opportunity to get into the tunnels and regroup. And, you know, they look at that as, hey, free pass. We killed 1,400.
You know how we could have a ceasefire? Hamas could give up all those hostages and march right out of Gaza.
Yep. I mean, and where are all of the media organizations demanding that Hamas cease firing, right? Why is it only on the IDF or the Israelis? Let's talk to Senator Marsha Blackburn about this. Senator Blackburn joining us on the Murphy Show hotline this afternoon. And Senator, you and your office just put out a press release that if I did not believe it, I would not. I mean, I believe it, obviously, because I know it's true, but it is difficult to believe that there are over 500 or thereabouts Americans who are hostage in Gaza. First off, good afternoon, Senator. Thank you for being on with us. And talk to us a little bit about this revelation that you just put out.
Yes, indeed, and it's always good to join you. Thank you. What we have learned over the weekend is that there are at least 500 Americans that are in Gaza. What we also were troubled by was Jake Sullivan's remarks on Sunday on Face the Nation, where he talked about trying to get the Americans out, and they were working with Hamas to secure this release, and Hamas was making some demands. So I've got this letter to go over. I looked at, when I heard those remarks, I thought, well, we need a little bit of clarification around this. So we pulled up the U.S. code to see how they define hostage. And when you pull up 18 U.S.C. 1203, what you see is that individuals in other areas that are being held against their will, other governments or organizations that are making demands of the U.S. government. And so that is how we classify a hostage. And it is important that we get our citizens out of Gaza. Today, Hamas let some from other countries leave, and then later this afternoon, just in the last hour or so, they've allowed 5 American citizen aid workers to leave. But what they will not do is call these 500 individuals who are not being allowed to leave hostages. But here are Jake Sullivan's exact words on this. In his Face the Nation interview, and I'm going to quote him. He says, the challenge right now is the Egyptians are prepared to let Americans and other foreign nationals out of Gaza. The Israelis have no issue, but Hamas is preventing their departure and making demands. Now, Matt, that is what I would classify, when you look at the U.S. definition, I would classify that as a hostage. And you also had John Kirby, who is the White House National Security spokesperson. On Monday, he said that Hamas was making a number of demands to allow foreign nationals to leave Gaza. But again, nobody is using the hostage word. So today, as we found out, other countries are being allowed to leave, and only 5 U.S. aid workers were allowed to leave and to get their people out. What we've done is to write Jake Sullivan over at the White House and ask what kind of contact they have with Hamas and how many Americans are going to be able to move out. How many people does the U.S. have contact with? Are they in regular contact with them? What are the demands that they are hearing from Hamas? and what they think a timeline is for getting safe passage for these individuals who are not being allowed to leave. And like I said,
Senator, this is Cameron Smith. I just wanted a clarification here. So it's not your contention that Hamas has 500 Americans in custody. Like, that's not what you're saying. You're saying they're stuck there and Hamas won't let them out, but Hamas
that
also,
by definition is
right, but hang on,
hostage state.
So, but there are also, I think it was 10 or 15 or so that Hamas actually has in custody. So I don't want to. I hear what you're saying. I think that you're making a very important point, but those are two separate groups, right?
Are two separate groups.
Okay.
That is right.
Okay.
And you have American civilians that are aid workers and are Americans who were aid workers and American civilians who were visiting family in Gaza. Those individuals, we don't know all of their whereabouts. What we do know is that Hamas has not allowed them to leave. They could leave. They should be able to walk right through the Rafah gate into Egypt. Egypt is ready to receive them. Israel has no problem. And Jake Sullivan's comments on Sunday, and his quote again, the challenge right now is the Egyptians are prepared to let Americans and other foreign nationals out of Gaza. The Israelis have no issue, but Hamas is preventing their departure and making demands. So you've got American citizens that are ready to leave, and it is Hamas who is not letting them out.
What, if anything, should we be doing about that, Senator?
There should be a clear directive from this White House. If you touch even one of these Americans, then we are going to take our actions. And they should be demanding that all of these individuals be removed. You know, we have heard the Israelis say for days now, everyone should move south toward the Rafah gate and get out of Gaza and out of Gaza City. And they continue to push to get people out of harm's way. We know that some of the aid trucks from the Red Cross and some of the organizations, not from UNRWA, but from other NGOs, they have gone in today with humanitarian aid. We are very concerned because past aid that has gone in has been intercepted by Hamas. And even last week, Hamas took 24,000 liters of gasoline. They took fuel. They took food. They took medical supplies that were intended for people that desperately need that humanitarian aid.
How could that not happen? I mean, they are the governing authority there, and so it seems.
Why some of us have said, you know, let's continue to not put aid into Gaza.
Right.
Let's get everybody toward the Rafah gate and to the south and clear the area, because you're not going to have people that need aid getting aid until you get rid of Hamas.
Well, and not to get too much into the weeds here, though, but the Rafah gate is not open. I mean, the Egyptians are not allowing Palestinian refugees into Egypt, are they?
They have not been. They did allow the foreign nationals and 5 aid workers that are U.S. citizens to exit today.
Right.
And they are continuing to monitor that situation there at the Rafah gate. They have tried to move people south so that they can get aid to them there at that Gaza side of the Rafah gate.
So I know that you wrote an op-ed piece in the New York Post, and I would encourage people to go read it, and you can go to Martha's website, and you can find a link to it, underlying how important it is for us to not to aid Hamas, but to destroy it. And sadly, the relief package presented by President Biden would do just that. Walk us through the concept here. I think I understand it, but I want the people of Tennessee to understand where you're coming from when you discuss the ability for Hamas to use what we would think of as humanitarian aid for their own war purposes.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And whether it's the UN Relief and Works Agency that has been putting aid into Gaza, we have found out that, and of course, let me say this, Donald Trump cut all the aid to this agency because they had started to hire people that were affiliated with Hamas. And Joe Biden came along and gave them $1 billion. Now, we know that Hamas is storing weaponry, rockets, ammo, armaments in these schools and UN facilities in Gaza. We also know that they're planning to have part of this money go to the UN and then the UN distribute it. What we are saying is if you do this, then that money is going to end up with Hamas. And it is not going to go to people that need to get that aid. So that is something that we all need to understand. Now, this $106 billion package that he is talking about, there would be $14.5 billion that would be there for Israel. There would be, I think it's $3 billion or so that would be for aid in different areas, one of those being Gaza. And what we have to realize is right now, while Hamas is running Gaza, if you send that aid to Gaza, it is going to Hamas. And when you look at the fact that Iran is the world's largest state sponsor of terrorism, Iran gives Hamas about $100 million a year because Hamas is one of their proxies. And this is one of the reasons I've led that push to freeze that $6 billion so that Iran cannot get that ransom payment, that $6 billion. And it's also why I've led that effort to have the sanctions put back in place. They're still there, and Trump enforced them and drove the oil revenue for Iran from $30 billion a year down to about $10 billion a year. Biden relaxes those sanctions, and Iran is making $1 billion a week selling oil, primarily to Russia, China, and North Korea. So let's put those sanctions back in place so that they are not going to be able to make that money, because you give Iran $1, they're going to spend part of it on terrorism, they're going to spend part of it on enriching uranium, and what we have to realize is that they are a destabilizing force in the Middle East.
Senator Marsha Blackburn joining us on the Matt Murphy Show, despite the fact that I called you Martha for some reason. I have no idea why I did that, Marsha, and I thank you for not pointing it out, but I noticed it, and I'm sorry for that. Marsha Blackburn joining us. So do you believe that it is necessary for us to provide aid to Israel directly over this conflict, considering the amount of money that we continue to overspend as a country, $2 trillion annually? We already give billions of dollars to the state of Israel, our greatest allies in the Middle East. Is it necessary that they receive a supplemental in your mind?
Israel is very specific about what their needs are. They can tell you specifically what they need, why they need, and how they would use this. We have to realize they are that ally, and they have stood with us. We also have to realize that Hamas and Iran wanted to blow up the idea of Saudi Arabia and Israel coming to a peace agreement. So they go in and they carry out these October 7th attacks. And we also have to realize that we cannot let Iran, we cannot let Russia, we cannot let China have a win, because their goal is to destroy Israel, to destroy the U.S. We have to be very clear-eyed about that.
Senator, thank you so much. It's always good to catch up with you, and you are clear-eyed on this subject, and I'm glad that you were able to speak directly to the people of the state of Tennessee regarding it. And here's hoping that we see a very swift conclusion to this issue by the destruction of Hamas. And as you have said, that is the way that we get to this conclusion.